morning, good evening, afternoon, whatever it is in your part of the world. Good to be with you again. My name is Jonathan. This, of course, is a podcast. And today, this episode is going to be dedicated to hanging out with one of my very favorite people in the entire world. That's right, Shay Daniel Foster. Shay is a young person who's been through quite a bit in his life already. And in the midst of that, has had to change some of his theological views. But also, maybe more importantly, he leads my all-time favorite nonprofit organization called lovehaiti.org. So if you're looking for a place to get plugged in, if you know, like, to be a decent human being in the world, maybe that's not the right way to say it, to be a human being that lives a full life, maybe that's a better way of saying it. If you know that to live a full life, you need to get plugged in and help folks who are experiencing some really difficult things, and you don't have a place to get plugged in, well, this is your opportunity. Lovehaiti.org, just spelled out just like it sounds, is a great place for you to get plugged in and a place for you to check out. I love what Shay is doing there, all the people we're getting to help, and I love talking with him about Haiti and about why he's involved and why it's important and some of the underlying maybe psychosocial, religious, spiritual, theological dynamics that exist in this entire conversation. All right, so this season of the podcast, you may know, we're calling Frequently Asked Questions. I will say I didn't have any specific questions about Haiti, but I did have a lot of young people asking questions about how to navigate change and how to figure out what to do with their life and meaning-making, relationships, all kinds of things that are colored by the stuff that Shay and I talk about. So I think that'll be helpful. Plus, it's just a great excuse to talk about Haiti. So I wanted you to know about this, all right? Hope you're doing well. Hope you've had a chance to check out the book, Theology of Consent, Mimetic Theory in an Open and Relational Universe. Seems to be doing relatively well on the Amazon sites and the other sites. And so I appreciate you picking up a copy, leaving a review. Speaking of leaving a review, it would be totally fine and acceptable for you to do such a thing regarding this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. Give it a star, a thumbs up, a like, bop it, zap it, hit it, whatever you do. For whatever reason, these reviews are highly important in our culture, so that would be much appreciated. Okay, well, I'm not going to say without further ado, because too many podcasters say that phrase, so I refuse to use it. I will now extract that from my brain and never even think about using it again. So I will say something like, without talking anymore myself, let's get to the meat of this thing and let's interact with my buddy Shay. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. All right, everybody. It's good to have, on my short list of favorite people in the world, this guy here makes it. It's a super short list. His name is Shay. His last name is Foster. And it's good to have you with us. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks, bro. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So
clarify for everyone. I should have said dad, I guess, but
that's all right. It's cool. I wanted to have Shay on because I always enjoy talking to him, but also, like a lot of questions I've gotten this season of the podcast and now these videos I'm doing on Zoom that'll live on Vimeo, that'll go through my Patreon page. How's that for multiple platforms? A lot of these questions have come from young people who are asking about like meaning-making questions about relationships, questions about just what to do with their life and theology and the Bible and religion and God and all this kind of stuff. So, and I know Shay has worked through a lot of those things. So I may or may not ask you those questions directly, but loosely, all these things are connected because I know, well, at least some of the young people that I know that know you respect you. So your opinion is valued.
That's nice to hear.
It is nice to hear. I mean, some of them I know don't respect you, but some I know do.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? You can't win them all.
It's interesting that I'm not sure what you'll bring up, but last night I spoke at a youth group, and it was the first time. I can't even remember how long, but the first time in such a long time, I really had to detail out some theological thoughts because, since I left like the typical consistent church life, I naturally just don't think about all that stuff anymore. I know kind of my values and what I believe, but if you don't kind of work through the logic, you kind of forget why you believe what you believe. And so last night I was writing this stuff down. I was like, why do I think that again? And most of the stuff I could kind of remember, but some of it just like, oh, this is what I think. And I can't really remember how I came here, but I know that this is where I am now. And so it's interesting feeling that and then talking to a youth group, full of Christian kids at a denomination church, which they were actually really great and receptive. So it wasn't a problem. But yeah, it was the first time in a while last night thinking through some of that stuff.
I totally relate to that. Like, honestly, every week, sometimes every day, I'm in the same position. I have to retrace my steps and remember why I got here. And every once in a while, I feel like an idiot because someone will ask me a question. Well, I often feel like an idiot, but every once in a while, specifically because of that same thing, I'm like, oh yeah, I crossed that bridge and all those other bridges like a few years ago. And now I have to remind myself. And even when you write a book, sometimes I can't even remember why I wrote, what did I say in that particular chapter? So totally get that. I think that's normal. So let's start there. What was something that you had to retrace to get in your mind straight for when you spoke to the kids last night? What was a theological thing or?
Yeah. So, I mean, like we were talking about Haiti. That may have been obvious, but Haiti, and then was trying to reconnect it to stuff the church is going through with their mission of like restoration. And so the youth pastor asked me to speak on what that looks like restoration in terms of like a global perspective, because they had recently been talking about their local perspective stuff. So the main thing the point I wanted to get across that I had to kind of remember the logical flow of is just the concept of creation and humanity generally being inherently good, as opposed to, just created from evil and inherently evil. So I went back and, a lot of this stuff is stuff I regurgitate from, Dr. Johann Trudeau of what he kind of writes is like living out of Genesis 1 instead of Genesis 3, which I'd never heard of that before him, but it makes so much sense of like, okay, sure. Yeah. Something was messed up at some point and obviously there's brokenness, whatever. But when it started and like at the actual beginning, it was all really good. And it's just really funny that it feels like we orient our lives around thinking it was all made and was inherently bad. I don't know. And I don't think a lot of people say that directly, but it's sort of how they shape their theology. So I went through a couple of those things, talked about a couple Hebrew words in the beginning of Genesis. And then what was the last piece? There was I didn't use these words directly, but more or less hinted at the pantheism versus panentheism conversation, which was really important for me, kind of when I distinguished between those two words there. And yeah, so I think more than anything, just trying to encourage kids to know that they're not just terrible people that need to find some escape. And then the other piece that was tied to that was just the whole second coming versus rapture concept, which I was actually surprised. There was only like 2 kids who raised their hand and said they knew what the word rapture meant. So it's possible, and maybe it's just specifically with this church, but maybe that kind of stuff has fallen out of the norm for some churches. At this point, the Left Behind series is kind of old. So, and I don't think they're making new movies or books. So I don't know.
Depends on what Kirk Cameron's up to.
I don't know if I know who that is.
Oh, that's the dude from who did a bunch of the Left Behind movie series.
Is he the author?
Oh, no, he's a movie guy, TV guy. He was on a show called Family Ties. That was probably a little before your time. No, not Family Ties.
Oh, no, I don't.
No, was it Family Ties? I don't
I say
remember.
Family Ties.
I don't remember. Anyhow, you know that the author LaHaye and Jenkins, one of those is a Nazarene.
I did not know that.
Left Behind. So yeah, the
That
Nazarenes
makes
have
it worse.
Mm-hmm. But I do think you're right, knowing where you were at last night. That church probably has left behind the Left Behind stuff a long time ago.
Yeah. I won't, I guess, get into the specifics, but like, I am so pleasantly shocked at some of the stuff I hear that they talk about at this church, and specifically, my friend who's this youth pastor, some of the stuff he talks about with his kids, that like the open conversations they have. And they're in a denomination, that we're familiar with, that like we know does not cater to and, support those kind of conversations. And so it's just really confusing thinking back on like, okay, so when like, we had our church before our church closed down and was, quote unquote, uninvited from our denomination. And this is the same denomination of church that I'm speaking of. Also, you can take all this out. I don't know if this is okay for you,
You're good.
for us to mention
fine.
this, but it's just like, so what is it about these instances? Because this isn't the first time this has happened. Other things have happened in other churches that it feels like, okay, that's basically what we were doing and saying, but we got booted so quick. and there is something to be said, I know, about regional stuff, but like this church is in our region, like right next to us. So yeah. So I don't know where you went wrong, man. I don't know what you did, but
well, first of all, it's not surprising that this particular youth pastor is having those kind of conversations, given that this guy grew up in our youth group and he was influenced.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
He was influenced by you and others, and maybe slightly by me, and has got a good head on his shoulder. So that makes a lot of sense. And I know the pastor is much more progressive and open to things, but it's you cannot wrap your mind around it, why certain people and certain churches get excommunicated so quickly. Certainly some of it has to do with how I was trying to be proactive and forthright with what I was thinking and make sure they knew about it. Something
which
could
is
be
really ironic. That
I know. Yeah. Another piece, which I don't know how to say this without trying to make myself look cool, but God knows I need myself to look cool anyhow. So another piece of this that's been pointed out to me is that the quickness with which they reacted probably is commensurate with the amount of how challenged they felt by me particularly. So it's possible they really felt like I had some influence and they needed to move swiftly in order to remove that influence.
And that eventually it could have come to a place like, and I was there and a part of it to know that the point of the whole thing, it was not to challenge people, it was to kind of dialogue about the stuff. But I can see from their side of things how they would think with how that was going, that it was going to come to a place where it was going to be like, okay, it's either his job or ours, because this conversation doesn't seem like it's going to stop. So I don't know. That might not be right, but.
Well, no, that conversation regarding LGBTQ is definitely not going to stop. And for that matter, no theological conversation is ever going to stop, because about the time you land somewhere, things shift, cultural norms change, and so you got to re-normalize everything. So it doesn't make any sense at all. But hey, here we are, and as hard as it's been, I have some gratitude about it. So that's good.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think you do too. And actually, I guess since we're on the subject, I will say one of the things probably I'm most grateful for is the way you and Evan had to grow up in that and were formed by that, but that we all, I feel like, at least, I'm sure your perspective is different in some ways, but I feel like for me, we all we did it together, even though I was obviously leading the charge on some of the stuff. I really was open to what you guys were thinking and saying and feeling, and felt like we had, generally speaking, alignment with all of that. So I'm really grateful to have had that experience and then to be where we're at now.
Yeah. I think I've told you this before, but going into college, so like, right before college, coming out of high school, I more or less probably still had all the standard typical evangelical beliefs, even though I didn't have like backing or like emotional attachment to those beliefs. And then starting freshman year, and as it was for you, a lot of this just came about because I was thinking of, my sister's death. I started just to realize like it wasn't working for me. And I think it was the first semester or second semester of my freshman year of college. I went through some sort of theology class, and I came away. This was not what was explicitly taught, but I came away from that class finally just saying to myself, like, you know what? I don't think that if this whole thing works, this whole thing doesn't work for me if hell is a real place, that works the way we've always talked about it. And that was like the first thing I thought of that was like, okay, crap. So this is different. And I don't know what this will be like if it ever comes up with close friends or family. And then it was probably like that Christmas break. Somehow it came up with you and I said something, or I guess from my point of view, I was being very cautious. And I was like, yeah, I don't really know if I think that hell is the thing that we've always thought it was. And you immediately were just like, oh yeah, for sure. And that's when I was like, oh, okay. So we can probably actually talk about this stuff. And then that was, honestly, that kind of feels like the end of that story, because since then I've always felt like we've been able to talk about that stuff, and in such a freaking weird way been on that journey together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so much of it was fueled and continues to be fueled in many ways by just the pain of losing Quincy. I know for me, often, and you've heard me say this, the phrase that kept coming to my mind was like, all bets are off. Like, it doesn't really matter what other people think, because the pain we already felt was so much greater than anything you're going to do. Even the day I walked out of the denominational, that last meeting, and I was like, holy cow, I can't believe my entire life just shifted so abruptly, but I had peace about it. And in part, I know it was because, I'd like to say all of it's because I knew I was right, but frankly, I have my moments where I'm not sure I'm always right. But
I don't know that we're right.
The deeper piece of it is that, there was so much pain previous to that nothing else even registered.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man.
Yeah. I don't know if this is what you were getting at, but I definitely came to the place where it's like, 100% I might be wrong, but it really doesn't even matter to me if I end up being wrong. And there's a word for this that I can't remember. It's some philosophers like little logic triangle thing, or no, it's a square. And it's the whole thing of like, if you believe in God and God doesn't exist, okay, so nothing really happens to you after death. But if you don't believe in God and God does exist, so like that logic basically leads people to be like, okay, just say you believe in God, even like just in case this thing happens. And then, but then you come to a place of like, okay, so even if that is real, if that is the God, honestly, I don't really care. And I don't want to be a part of that thing. And of course that sounds so arrogant to say, because like, sure, it's God, but it doesn't work for me. And if that is the God of the universe, I would be open to taking up arms and rebelling a little bit against that God of the universe. So
I would be open to rebellion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, I'm proud of the way that you've transitioned and continue to transition and change.
Thanks,
tell me about why you wanted to get into nonprofit work.
Yeah, I definitely don't have a good answer. All right, give me one. So sorry. I'm going to put Toro outside and he's breaking everything.
Okay. Got to get rid of the cat. This is why I don't have cats. Because I don't really like him. except for Toro and Freddie. I like those 2 cats, and that's it.
Were you talking to me right there?
Maybe. I'm not
Okay,
going to tell you what I
okay.
said, though.
Okay. It's all good.
All right. So
Almost shattered a bunch of glass.
why'd you feel compelled to get into nonprofit work?
I think it probably makes sense to just kind of trace the trajectory I was on, because I think that obviously that's where how everyone ends up where they're at. But so I went into college. Like initially going into college, the only thing I thought I wanted to do maybe was like be a youth pastor. And then I don't know, I can't remember why, but pretty quickly I decided I didn't want to do that. And that summer before college, we went to Haiti for the first time.
Hey, by the way, we should say that in 2nd grade, you were 50% going to be a pastor.
Oh, yeah.
And 50% going to be a policeman.
50% pastor, 50% policeman. Yeah.
So anyhow, but by college, you thought maybe youth pastor. All right, pick it up.
Which funny enough, that's what my father-in-law, that's what he ended up being when I married Caroline.
Interesting.
Her dad is like more or less 50% pastor, 50% policeman. So, but yeah, so we did that trip to Haiti, and I had little to no idea what I wanted to do, and so that trip to Haiti was very formative for all of us. And for me, like almost on an academic level, I started to think about like, oh, culture is really interesting to learn about and to study. And so still within the ministry department at the university I went to, there was a major called intercultural studies, which to me, just that word by itself, those words sounded really cool. So that's what I ended up signing up for. That's what I graduated with. And for the most part, I really enjoyed it. It did end up being more ministry theology heavy than what I thought I was getting into in the beginning. But it's still about half of my courses were catered to really what I was interested in, which was the sociology, anthropology, social justice side of things. So that was all happening. And so, when you're learning about something, you more or less, even if you find out later in life, oh, I wasn't actually interested in that. When you're learning about it and trying to, get passing grades and all that, you develop more interest just because you know more about something. So you couple that with the fact that we started going back to Haiti consistently. And by our 2nd or 3rd trip, I was lucky to be asked by one of our friends at Heart to Heart International to kind of come assist with one of the trips they were doing with the university. And so I said, sure. And over like the 2-month window I had before that trip, I really just dove into and went crazy with trying to learn Haitian Creole, trying to learn a lot about Haiti's history. And to me, it had everything to do with like proving my worth on this next trip and, impressing people and all that, which I will say to an extent, I think did happen. I don't know necessarily where my motivations were and if it was good or not. And we could talk much more about that. But yeah, interest with culture started. Haiti is like just a lot of places. Once you start getting involved, it's so hard not to stay involved for good and bad reasons. But, a huge piece of and then again, all of this is like for good and for bad, but a huge piece of my identity in terms of how my worldview has been shaped and all that has come from Haiti. So even if tomorrow something happened and I wasn't doing work there anymore, which by the way, I do not live in Haiti. Typically I'll visit 3 to 5 times a year, but recently haven't been going as much because of the unrest going on down there. But even if tomorrow I stopped doing all the work I do in Haiti, it would always influence and be a part of me on both conscious and subconscious levels. Because there's like, you can't get around. You can't stick your head back in the sand after you experience and see some of the stuff that you see. And I know Haiti isn't necessarily unique in that sense, and that there's a lot of places in the world that you can experience that'll do that too. So back to your question of, I guess you asked about the humanitarian piece. I think I've always known I wanted to help people and that it was a good thing when people help people. And then Haiti and our friends at Heart to Heart gave such a unique approach that I thought was very well thought out. And to this day, I still think is well thought out and honestly is the foundation of what we do at Love Haiti. So I knew I wanted to help people. Culture was really interesting. I thought I found something special in the group we were going with and the model that they used. So, I mean, with all that, I think I just kind of ran with it.
Yeah, I could see all that. You were predisposed toward doing some kind of humanitarian thing anyhow. And then this all came along. And of course, we didn't tell the full story, but your sister Quincy had been to Haiti previous and had really fallen in love with it and was planning to be was hoping to be some kind of medical missionary or something. So after she died, we all were like, well, among other things, maybe we can go down there and stir up some good in her honor. So we kind of started going for her. And then we kept going back, and you specifically kept going back for the Haitians and for her. She's always with us. But so yeah, it totally makes sense now, like the way it's unfolded. It's been so unbelievable to watch, like for me, because the first time you went, you were what, 17, 18? And
it was 18, yeah.
And, we were literally sitting on our butts, moving rocks off of a grass field in order to try to make a soccer field, and hanging out with these Haitians that to this very day, literally this day, and I know you do too, more than me. I was interacting with some of the young people that we met on that very first trip, interacting today through Facebook and stuff. So to watch you in that really impressionable because of grief, but also impressionable because your brain, you absorb so much. You're so socially intelligent. And to see all that happen, it's such a beautiful story. Sometimes your mom and I just look at each other and just shake our heads. We're like, this is nuts. This is crazy what
it is nuts.
All of us have been through, and then what you're doing. And then to top it off with, well, not that it can be topped off, but to add to the mix of how difficult, of how challenging the country is, and how hard it is. This is not just like a job where it on the outside, it might seem like, oh, it's nice and a fun, exciting job, which it is at times, but it's so ridiculously hard. So why do you think, first of all, I want to ask, why is Haiti in such a, I know we don't have time to unpack 400 years of colonialism and other things, but why do you think Haiti is in such a mess right now? And secondly, then I'm going to ask what are the most challenging things for you, particularly in your work with lovehaiti.org?
Yeah. This is gave a little snippet of this to the youth group last night too. I think the most honest place to like start this conversation is to, or at least for someone like me, is to acknowledge Haiti is where it is because of Haitians who have made terrible decisions, and because the international community never gave them a chance to make good decisions. So like when I started going to Haiti and, I started reading about Haiti's history for probably like 2, 3, 4 years there, I was really dead set on Haiti's never done anything wrong. 100% of this is all the international community that's exploited them. And someone could probably still convince me that was the case. But I think a more realistic, healthy, honest response is it's a mixture of both things. Haiti can't be where it's at right now if they wouldn't have had, some of the government disorganization and corruption that they've had over the last 100 years. But it's more complicated than just saying that, because then you ask yourself, okay, so why has the government been so disorganized and corrupt, let's just say over the last 30 years? And you look back to 1986 and if you dig deep enough, you'll find that U.S. interests or U.S. politicians directly have been propping up and supporting and more or less choosing Haiti's leaders for the last 30 years. And you could even go back further. I would say really one of the only autonomous times in Haiti's history over the last 100 years was the dictatorships, which was Papa Doc and Baby Doc, from the 50s to the mid 80s. And this is changing the topic a little bit, but as odd as it is, and as much as I'm not in favor of authoritarian regimes, which they very much were, the end result for Haiti with the Papa Doc and Baby Doc Duvalier it very much was a benevolent dictatorship for the end result on the Haitian people. And a lot of people know about the dictatorships in Haiti, and for sure it did things that contributed to Haiti's continued impoverishment. But at the time, it was Haiti's highest point of human development throughout its history. And, the hardest part to talk about is like with every authoritarian government, the secret police force and the silencing of people that, weren't agreeing with the dictatorship. And for sure they called it the Tonton Macoute, which was like like a boogeyman story that in all throughout Haiti's history, they would tell kids to like get them to do chores and stuff like that. And then so they actually labeled the secret police force the boogeyman. And for sure, there were between 2,000 and 3,000 people that were murdered by that secret police force. But it's complicated because then you think about since 1986, the beginning of democracy in Haiti after that dictatorship, how many tens of thousands of people have died because of the worsening conditions in healthcare and nutrition. And so it's difficult. And so, yeah, I've kind of only been talking about the last 30 minutes, but of course, nothing happens in a vacuum. And I think we're extremely tempted, especially as people who are on the privileged winning side of history. It's extremely tempting to always think things happen in a vacuum, because then we can distance ourselves from how we got to where we are and then how they got to where they are, and how it's more complicated than just waking up and making a decision one day that was good or bad. So yeah, and we could keep talking about that too. We could go back to the initial, independence debt that they had to pay to France. That was eventually kind of sold. So, actually, I'll stop right there. Maybe you can edit that out. That was going to be a longer, like me talking right there. I already talked for a bit.
It's fine. I don't plan to edit any out, but we can if we need to. But yeah, your point is they started in debt. And so that was a massive problem from the very beginning. And I agree with you. I think that you're wise to frame it that way, that Haitians made some bad choices as well as the international community. Of course, the problem is when you're already impoverished, when you're already behind the eight ball, so to speak, you have less choices to make and less influence. So whereas someone like me, who grew up with a lot of benefits that a lot of Haitian person might not have grown up with, I could make 100 mistakes before I figured out what I wanted to do or whatever. A Haitian may not, and the government may not have. They may only have a few choices. So it's tough, man. The stakes are really high when you only have a few choices.
Yeah.
Because of the position that the international community put them in at many instances. Yeah, I know you could go on all day. And so I encourage people to check out lovehaiti.org and or reach out to you. They can find your information in there to get more stuff. What about in terms of the history and those kinds of things? What about for you specifically with a nonprofit right now? We've had, we're going on a little over 7 years, 7.5 years. We've been going down there. Involved in all kinds of things, soccer fields and healthcare and nurses and teachers and schools. It's been an unbelievable story I'm super proud of, but also incredibly hard. So What's the most challenging thing for you right now?
Yeah, I guess I don't think we talked about the current context and situation in Haiti.
Right. Yeah.
It's likely a lot of people know at least a little bit because they've been all over the news for the last year. But Haiti right now, you could say is in like the worst 6-week stretch of its history since they won their independence in 1804 from the French. And basically what's going on is there's no functioning government. The only real government representative in power right now isn't even recognized by about half the country at least, and almost certainly is implicated in last year's assassination of the president. So absolute government vacuum. Starting a year and a half ago, gangs started to organize themselves a little more. And now, in terms of the capital, they control about 3/4 of the capital. Police force is vastly outnumbered. And so what's ended up happening is people have been protesting and putting up roadblocks for a multitude of reasons. But the main ones are, we're tired of the gangs and the kidnappings. We're tired of fuel prices being raised. And that's a complicated conversation with Haiti's history. And we're tired of the rampant inflation that is being caused by a multitude of actors. Obviously, there's inflation going on everywhere in the world right now. But because of the, I guess, lack of transparency in some of the Haitian banking system, it's worse. I won't even lay blame. I'll just say it's worse in Haiti than the rest of the world in terms of inflation. So for the last 6 weeks, there have been several weeks we've had to pause about all of our programs on the ground because, one, a lot of our staff and people can't move anywhere with the roadblocks and the I don't even know if I mentioned there is no fuel in the country right now. The biggest gang controls the main fuel terminal in the country, and that has started to maybe change, but you never really know. So I guess a good picture to describe the situation on the ground is I'm a part of this Facebook group that's like Haiti tourist information or whatever. And there was a guy in there who I think was about my age who he posted something about like, hey, I've never been to Haiti, but I'd love to go right now and go to the slums in Port-au-Prince and tell the story of some of the people being affected by the gangs. And I've never responded to anything on this page before, but I apparently couldn't help myself with not saying something to this guy. And one, I did mention, I think that's entirely honorable and a really cool thing to try to do. And I mean, I think that's like Jesus and a reporter right there. Mm-hmm. But I told him, just like practically, if you can get to Port-au-Prince, you will not be able to drive more than a quarter mile from the airport. I really don't think you'll be able to find anyone to drive you that has gas or that would be willing to drive you through all the stuff you're going to see. And also, you're not going to have clean water when you get to where you're going. And I would genuinely say there's probably a 50% chance you would get shot by a gang going where you're going in a car, being a foreigner, because all of the rules of, the humanitarian reporting, whatever that applies to the world, they don't apply in Haiti right now. Everyone's a target. And
especially in Port-au-Prince, right?
Especially in Port-au-Prince. And it's, and I would say the major cities, the probably 3, 4, 5 biggest cities, it's pretty similar all over. But yes, Port-au-Prince is by far the worst.
If you were able to paratroop into certain mountain areas that you love to go, paratroop. If you were a paratrooper, you would feel more comfortable than having to go through the major cities. Slightly.
Oh yeah, for sure, more comfortable. And over the last couple of years, there's been a handful of times I have gotten into Haiti through the Dominican Republic, which is the neighboring country on that same island. But with this newest round of stuff that's been going on, and the main reason is the lack of fuel and the fact that, okay, so if I were to get to the border or something, I'm not going to be able to go anywhere. As soon as I cross the border, I'm just like standing there kind of stuck. But yeah, for sure. If you can, this is kind of the way it's always been too, but especially the last couple of years, if you could get into rural Haiti, like where we work, it's a totally different world than the cities. But that only extends so long and goes on for so long because at some point, everyone is affected by the stuff. And you can see the business, the financial side of that is definitely already happening. I mean, clean water is not reaching those places. Fuel is not reaching those places. But yeah, I guess the big point to make is the gang control in rural Haiti is not like it is in the cities. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a mess right now, man. And it always kind of has been, but it definitely is recently. And meanwhile, we all have, good friends that live in the middle of all these. These are real live human beings who are just being crushed by all of this stuff.
Yeah. And so to answer your question about the most difficult thing right now, and this isn't unique with me, this is everyone involved with our organization. It really just feels like, what are we supposed to be doing right now? Because, school is not in session. That's a big part of what we do. We're not, our soccer tournament stuff with our kids is on hold because we do that in connection with local schools. So that's not happening. And we have people that, for just those two things, for education and for soccer, we have people that work for us that do things that help us run these programs. And so we are still paying everyone, but week in and week out, it's kind of like we don't know if anyone's going to be able to do anything this week. Luckily, we really have gotten lucky with some of the healthcare stuff we do, in that our full-time nurse, when all the newest protests started happening, she was already in rural Haiti where we work. And so even though she's been extremely limited on her supplies, she's been able to continue hosting clinics, stuff. So yeah, waking up every morning and reaching out to my main coworker, my co-executive director, who is a Haitian man, and us just trying to figure out, like, we can do some work, we can make some headway on a couple things, but part of it feels pointless because we have no idea when, said project would be able to happen. Or it's also possible that in a couple weeks, maybe there's a massive, government overhaul and there's a new constitution and we have to figure out as a nonprofit, how do we operate under this new constitution? So it's very difficult. It's always difficult doing the work in Haiti, but this is a new kind of, there's probably a word less intense than nihilism that I want to use, but I don't know what the word is because I don't want to use the word nihilism. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't either. Why should the people listening to this and others in the global north, well, there might be people listening to this not from the global north, but why should people care about this most poorest country, at least in the Western Hemisphere, probably?
Honestly, like my first response is I don't know. I kind of got to a point recently where I don't know how to explain to people how they should care about the things going on in the world, even if they don't affect them. At the same time, with everything with Haiti, like all of that heaviness that I have in my life, I know that I do not pay much attention to, and I avoid a lot of the other conflict and terrible stuff going on in the world because I don't think I can hold all that. So I get that everyone is kind of in that same position with probably whatever's going on in their life, but then at the same time, it's like it feels wrong and like it's not going to work if this whole thing is based around me trying to convince you to care. And it's more complicated than that because I get, like a big part of what I do is the storytelling side of things, and that's huge for people. And sometimes people just don't know the story. And so that's what will get them to care. But yeah, I mean, you could go a quasi spiritual route, and I think you've probably talked about this before, but I think a lot of the justice and the I don't know, the spirituality of the world in some way is connected to Haiti because of its history with, being the first place, truly like the first place in human history to be like, we're not going to do the slave thing. And we're also not going to be slaves anymore. So much came out of that, so much good. And so, you think about that and then you think, oh man, how beautiful would it have been if Haiti was this most affluent, well-educated society because they were that first group to do that. And they're not. And so I've talked to a lot of Haitians definitely feel this. And I know that Americans that visit feel it too. There's something about the place in terms of its place, its position in history that is extremely special. And it's a cornerstone of, I think, modern human history because of what they did, what they were able to accomplish. And so I think people, in terms of like Christians, if you care about, racial justice and kind of restoring humanity from the racialized thing we do now, you kind of have to look back to Haiti, because that was, such an incredible portion of history that happened that at the time, and then even to this day, still the world did not like very much.
And you're talking about the slave revolt that was successful.
Yeah, the fact that a bunch of Black people could fight and win against a bunch of white people in the 1800s, and then, there have been many slave revolts in human history, and for the most part, because they're because people are uneducated and were formerly slaves, it's very difficult to form and organize like a functioning society. And Haiti was the first place that was actually able to do that, which that really was the problem. It wasn't so much that it's like, yeah, we know everyone can fight and, sometimes people win battles, but the fact that they could do that and then be like, okay, we're our own country now and we're governing ourselves as these Black people, that was a problem for, obviously for France, and because they lost, a lot of money in that process. But for the U.S. at the time, which was still, I believe in 1804, we were still importing slaves in the country. Slavery was obviously still happening. But yeah, it was a threat to the way the world was built. And I don't even think I mentioned this last night with the youth group, but I wanted to point out, this is not to get nitpicky, but talking about colonialism and like the affluence of Western Europe and America, again, nothing happens in a vacuum. So the Eiffel Tower was built during the time that Haiti was repaying its independence debt to France. So there's no direct like line item you can look at that connects this, but $21 billion was being paid from Haiti to France over that time. And France made enormous investments in architecture and in landmarks. And so now you have people today, 2022, go to France, look at the Eiffel Tower, and you look at France and you look at Haiti, and it's like, well, this is such a beautiful place that has all of its crap together. And Haiti over there, but
Haiti
the
might
Eiffel
have built
Tower,
it.
yeah, like, and that's not, yeah, the Eiffel Tower, you could 100% argue was financed by Haitians paying off their own slavery, like paying off their own freedom, and that's not, that's a pretty stark example, but it's not a unique thing at all. I mean, so much of Western Europe, and in different ways, the U.S. had those ties to colonialism that financed, during the Industrial Revolution, so much of what they do that created them to be what they are now. And then, a lot of people in these affluent societies will look at a place like Haiti and be like, well, they basically just have to develop the way we did. And the way that we developed internationally is like illegal now. It's not going to happen. And also the resources and timelines and everything, they're so different. It would never work again the same exact way. So it's hilarious. I gave this example last night, and I think when I spoke at Mission Church a couple years back, but the Citibank example of that Haitian independence debt. At some point after about 50 to 75 years, somehow the French government they sold like part of the debt to a bank in the U.S. And then also the Haitian government had to start taking out other loans from U.S. banks to pay back the independence debt. So it's kind of those two things. One of those banks was Citibank, as we know today. So a big part of, or at least a portion of Citibank's profitability throughout the 18 and 1900s was Haitians paying off their slave debt. And I today have a Citibank credit card that, gives me access to wealth and finances that I otherwise wouldn't have. I also use it to buy flights to Haiti at times. So it's this whole big circle of like, okay, this company, at least part of why they're profitable is because of this. And I benefit from this wealth and resources that they created here because of they extracted it from Haiti. And then I go to Haiti to try to help people. And, I don't do this, but some people go to Haiti and try to like tell them what they're doing wrong and how to get themselves out of poverty while using the credit card that was financed by their slavery, So, yeah, I don't know how we got here, but talking about the Eiffel Tower and all that, I would love to go to France someday and see all those landmarks. But I know I'm never going to be able to look at them and completely just be like, oh, that's beautiful. And what a great thing,
Right.
Because it's too complicated. It's
Right.
Yeah.
I thought that's a really good way to answer it. First of all, by recognizing that you don't really know how to convince people in terms of why should Americans get involved, but also tying it back to, it does feel like Haiti is something of an intersection of history and geography in our world. I didn't realize till we started going to Haiti that that's actually where Christopher Columbus first landed.
Mm-hmm.
He short little stint in Cuba at the same trip, but really the landing was the beach over there in Cap Haitian off the other side of Haiti that we often go to. And, really, whether he intended to or not, Columbus initiated the global slave trade right there on the shores of Haiti. So it was the first place, like the start of the quote unquote New World. And then you connect that with the first place with the slave revolt and all the other things that have happened. So that's a really cool, important reason and a way to keep this in mind. It feels like if we're interested in justice, whether we're Jesus followers or not, I think a lot of people who aren't even, necessarily Christians care about, forms of justice. And so if we do, we should be concerned with this place.
Isn't it insane? So like, I know in elementary school, obviously I learned about Christopher Columbus in 1492 and, his three little ships. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was said at one point and just never was information that a third grade me would care about. I was always under the impression from school, like, yes, Christopher Columbus, discovered America and all that. And I guess they never mentioned where he first landed. I mean, we were told it was the Americas and that he thought it was India. That was what we were told. And to me, especially then with the stories later of like Plymouth Rock and all that stuff, I always just thought, oh, he came to like the East Coast US.
Yeah,
today.
Florida or something.
Like how was it never communicated like, oh, the place he first landed was modern day Haiti? Just like putting that sentence in there. But that's not a part of that. Right. Was not a part of my curriculum.
Yeah, and not that you're a third grade teacher or mine, because I'm the same way. Was personally trying to do anything, but it feels it feels like this collective, subconscious way to cover up all of this stuff and just kind of suppress, kind of keep it all. So you do kind of have to work once you start to realize the importance of this area. You kind of have to work to uncover. And once you do, it's like, how did this happen? How in the world have we been so blatantly ignorant? Well, there's probably a lot of reasons why, but hopefully through the work that you're doing and lovehaiti.org is doing, it'll help take small steps towards uncovering these things and shedding light and truth. So yeah, so people can still get involved. We still got a nonprofit going. It's called lovehaiti.org. Still give money.
Sure, yep.
We desperately need money and engagement, because even though some stuff is on hold right now, well, first of all, you're still paying lots of Haitians to, to do a job that,
and while, yeah,
go ahead.
And I was just going to say, while some stuff is on hold, there are things that are popping up that are unfortunate, but that are kind of one-time, almost emergency response things that we're financing. A little bit of food aid distribution. I don't even think you know this. I don't think we've talked about this, but in one of the areas in Haiti that we've been heavily involved in, and this might sound worse than it is, and maybe that's okay, but the food situation, there's no trade going on between communities that are more than a mile apart right now because roads are blocked. There's no fuel. You can't get things anywhere. So in one of the communities we're involved with, people on the market have started to sell agricultural grain feed as food to other people. It's one of the things they are starting to resort to supplement their diet because they're not able to get the normal food items that they've been able to get. So I just bring that up because in terms of the one-time response projects, we're looking at just trying to locate the 50 most vulnerable families in this community and to send some money down for us to buy some real food and deliver them to the family. So there's stuff like that pops up, and the money can always be used, I guess is the point there.
Yeah. And meanwhile, to your earlier point, next week or 2 weeks or whatever, there's going to be new windows of opportunity, and we have soccer things to run and schools to run, and we have medicine to buy, and we can't be behind on all that. So whoever's listening, if you're not plugged in somewhere at a nonprofit, I can't recommend this one highly enough. I routinely hear, I'm sure Shay does too, but I routinely hear from folks how impressed they are with what you've done, and how just the idea here is to help Haitians. So it's not to just give them money, though at times, especially during these really crisis times, that is what we're going to do, because what else can you do? But the longer, bigger picture is trying to figure out what they want and then to assist them, rather than being like the wealthy global north coming in and with a bunch of money telling them what to do and, building stuff that they don't want or need. So that's a really important thing.
Yeah, we don't, I would genuinely say, outside of when we kind of put our foot down and encourage and make happen girls soccer, that does not naturally happen in most of our communities. Outside of that, there's nothing we do that we are like asking or telling people to do. We just are trying to do with them what they are trying to do. And that's pretty special. And, there's not every nonprofit has that sort of that disposition. And it's also what makes it stuff like right now complicated with, we just want to be a partner for Haitians to develop Haiti. And so then you think through, okay, so what does that mean? There are plenty of Haitians in gangs that are trying to develop Haiti, but we don't really want the gang takeover. What I'm trying to say is it's hard to know as a consensus for the population, like what exactly they want moving forward and how to support that. And it all gets drowned out so much by international actors and politicians giving their input.
Complicated. Man.
It's so complicated. Yeah.
Thanks for saying that. Right. The one thing that we do have pushed a little bit is the girls' soccer, and that's because Quincy was a soccer player and loved it so much, and also because at the same time, when we're down there, especially in the rural areas, we've noticed there's a little bit of stigmatism attached to girls playing soccer. Like, it's not supposed to happen. So,
I was just gonna build off that of like, if places in the States were the same way as Haiti, and actually maybe there's an example to find to make this comparison. if a place in the States was like Haiti with such limited resources, like say the whole community has a soccer ball and enough jerseys for one team, right. I think in the States, we naturally would probably revert to, oh, boys are going to play soccer then. If we only have enough stuff for like one team, it's going to be the boys, because that's, that's in the US, that's where the money and the focus is on sports still. So anyway, I just say that all because I think some people hear that and they'll be like, well, why are Haitians misogynistic or whatever? And I'm not saying they're not. That is a thing in Haitian culture for sure. But I don't think we're all that different with what we would do in that exact same scenario. So.
Right. Sorry. Thank you for reframing that. I wasn't trying to suggest that, because you're right.
No, yeah. And I didn't think you were. Yeah.
Everywhere you go, we have that same kind of problem. But given that Quincy was a player and that and played college soccer, and loved it, it was so much a part of her life. And that girls in a lot of those rural areas aren't getting that chance. We kind of, I personally have kind of always pushed that a little bit. So, well, anyhow, we've gone a while, and I think you and I could talk forever about Haiti and about theological reconstruction and all that. But I know our listeners, they can't listen forever. I mean, everyone has an attention span, Shay. So we're going to wind this down. What about, as we close out, what's one of the dumbest things that you've ever said in Haiti as you've tried to translate and interpret? And what people need to know, first of all, is that you speak Haitian Creole extremely well and are relatively fluent in it. But I always love hearing about some of the.
I won't start an argument there with you over the almost fluent piece.
Well,
but,
I mean, when you for this white American guy, you seem
exactly, yeah. For the context, sure. Like, and that's actually really fun, is to make people think that, even though it's not true. And I feel totally free and liberated to tell whatever story I want, because you know all the stories of those things. So
you should feel free.
Most everything is the funny stuff like that happens is like slang sort of stuff, and most of them end up being innuendos. And for a while, it felt like, why are there so many freaking innuendos in Haitian Creole? And then I kind of compared it to English, and I realized, oh, it's not actually like that. I just have grown up speaking English, and so I know. So like, I think the best comparison to give is, for whatever reason in English, if you want to say that someone was having sex, you say they were doing it, like they did it. Some people will say that. And so it's kind of a similar thing in Creole. And so you have the words, like make and thing. And then, a lot of times you're trying to say make something, make anything, make a thing, whatever. If you forget that middle word, you end up saying slang of like sexual intercourse. So that one has happened multiple times. One of which was in a church. I was talking to a Haitian lady, and I was trying to ask if there is anything she would like my group to do for her, or like with her, because we were like doing some stuff in the church. I don't even remember. And so like what I like in terms of slang, what I said was like, would you like collectively for us to have intercourse? And there was a brief pause from her and a frown. And luckily, there was a Haitian friend next to me, and he knew exactly. It's like if you knew what I was trying to say, you would just like move on. But she didn't know what I was trying to say. And then that same thing has happened. Once we were leaving a clinic, and I was with a group of Americans, and I was trying to make a joke with the kid and say that white people, they move slowly, they do things slowly, and I accidentally said white people have intercourse slowly, and the kid, his like eyes widened. It's like he had this whole revelation. Like,
I never knew
so that's an example. Yeah. There are others too, but
those are good ones. I do like those stories.
Those
Those are good. All right, man. Well, thanks for the work that you do, and genuinely love it. Super proud of it, and we'll all just keep doing the best that we can. And thanks for hanging out with me and the millions of people listening to this podcast and to this page that are subscribing to this Patreon page.
Well, you got that #1 best bookseller on Amazon right now, so your listeners are
telling
going
you.
to be skyrocketing.
We have, as of today, it's been 2 weeks. It's been a #1 new release. So, like I said, I don't know how long these they call them new releases, but anytime you can have #1 attached to it, especially with books, probably should just take it. So,
yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot. I'm going to push end now on the recording. Peace out.
Peace.
Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us today. Share this episode if you found it to be helpful. Review it, star it, like it. Appreciate the interaction. Feel free to connect with me. I'm not great on Facebook or other social media, but you can try it. That didn't sound too promising, did it? Sure, you can try it. You'll definitely have luck if you find me through my website, jonathanfosteronline.com, and certainly on my Patreon page. All you got to do is search for Jonathan_Foster. All right, we've had some funky guitar. Now it needs to move into some boom bap beats. Thank you so much. Have a great day.